this demonstration is going to be on how to estimate on-reservation emissions for your on-road sources. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to use an allocation method. And what that means is that it's taking the county-wide emissions that you get from the NEI, and it's scaling them down to the reservation level. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the vehicle miles traveled data. And we've talked about how to calculate vehicles miles traveled in a previous module, but we're going to go over that today also. What we're looking at right now is a spreadsheet. And in this spreadsheet, we have an example fictional reservation that I completely made up. This reservation does not exist, but for demonstration purposes, I made it up, and it's located in between Coconino County and Yavapai County in Arizona. So this fictional reservation spans 2 counties, and you'll see we have Coconino County first, and then we have Yavapai County. And in Coconino County, we have an interstate that runs through the reservation, that's I-40. And in Yavapai County, we have a state route, 89A, that runs through the reservation. And then we have several local roads that also are on the reservation in each of these counties. So remember, vehicles miles traveled, or VMT, is the miles of road multiplied by the traffic count. And if it's a daily traffic count, like it is in most cases, you want to multiply that by 365 days per year to get the annual VMT, because remember, when you calculate emissions, you want to calculate them on annual level. So I went through and got some information. So I got my reservation road lengths. I looked at some online maps and some maps that my fictional reservation has, and I estimated the road lengths for each of these roads. Then for these highly traversed roads like the interstate and the other principal arterial road, I went online and collected that data. So I went to these sources that I have listed here, which is the Arizona Department of Transportation, and looked at their traffic counts for these portions of the road that are on the reservation. And like I always have told you, remember to include sources of how you get everything. So those sources of how I got this information are listed in my spreadsheet. For the local roads, I did a traffic count. So I went out and counted cars and other vehicles for a few hours and then multiplied that by 24 hours per day to get the daily traffic count. So I entered all of that into my spreadsheet, and you'll see, if I scroll here, I've got the calculated annual vehicles miles traveled. And if you look, you can see the formula of how I calculated that. So in Excel, this is how the formula looks. So it says I use cell D5, so D5, which is the traffic count, multiplied by 365 for the days per year, and multiplied that by C5, which is the road length, to get the annual vehicles miles traveled data. So that's how I calculated my vehicles miles traveled data. And we're going to use that by taking that number and seeing what the county level number is, and then getting a ratio of those numbers. And then we're going to apply that to the countywide emissions. So we're going to multiply that ratio by the total countywide emissions to get the estimate of the reservation emissions. So what we have for the countywide VMT data is the 2017 NEI VMT data. Now, you are more than welcome to get other VMT data for the county if you can find more current data. And one source of that might be the State Department of Transportation website. They might have data on VMT that you can use, and you could also contact your State Department of Transportation directly and ask them if they have more current data. You might need to work a little bit with that data and make some modifications to it. For example, they might be able to give you data for the entire state, but it's not allocated out by the county. So you might have to work with them a little bit or perhaps work on the data yourself to get that data how you want it to look. But the demonstration today is on using the 2017 county-wide VMT data from the NEI. So we're going to go show you that. So where you find that data. So back in the EI Fundamentals training site, remember when you downloaded your on-road data for your county to look at the emissions? Well, that's the same place that the VMT data are in. So just as a quick refresher, let's take a look at that site. So where you would find that data is in the Accessing Your NEI GPR Data folder. That's in Module 4 of the EI Fundamentals training site. So if you need to download that spreadsheet again, you would go into that folder and you would find your state and you would download the data, the on-road data for your state. So for example, for California, you would just download this on-road spreadsheet and that has the VMT data in it. So I am going to show you that data for Arizona, and we're going to use our fictional reservation VMT in that spreadsheet to allocate the emissions at the county level to the reservation level. So let's go back into this fictional reservation spreadsheet. So we've got our calculated annual VMT for the reservation, and now we need to use that to allocate the county-wide emissions to the reservation level. So let's go ahead and do that. This is how the spreadsheet looks when you first open it. So this is the spreadsheet I downloaded from the EI Fundamentals training site, and this is how it looks when we first open it. If you've been playing around with it, make sure that you're in the Total County Emissions tab, because that's where the VMT data are. So when you first open the spreadsheet, you'll notice that every single state and county is selected in the box. So in my particular example, I just have data for Coconino and Yavapai counties. So I only want those two counties to show up. So I need to make selections in this box. So first, I'm going to select Coconino County. And then when you do that, notice that the table to the left of this box and the table to the right of this box have been adjusted to include only Coconino County. Remember, I also have Yavapai County, so I need to also get that into the tables. So to do that, you need to scroll down to Yavapai County using this vertical scroll bar. What you need to do is you need to hold down Control key on your keyboard and click on Yavapai County at the same time. So if you want to select multiple counties in the state county box, you need to hold down the Control key on your keyboard and then select all of the counties you want to select. So let's say I didn't hold down the Control key. What would happen? So I'm just going through and I click on Yavapai County without holding down the Control key. So what happens is that it only has Yavapai County now because I didn't hold down the Control key, so I didn't select multiple items in state and county. Let's go back, new Coconino, and then scroll down. Now this time I'm going to hold down Control and then click on Yavapai. So holding down the Control key on my keyboard and clicking on Yavapai, it's now added. So both Coconino County and Yavapai County are in my tables, which is what I want. So the table on the left side of the state and county box shows the county emissions, and that's the total county emissions from the 2017 NEI for on-road sources. If we scroll over a little bit here to the right, so this table is where we want to paste in our reservation VMT values. And what that will do is it will calculate the reservation level emissions based on a ratio of the reservation VMT to the county VMT. So let's go back into our other spreadsheet. And this is where we calculated the VMT for at the reservation level for each of the individual counties that intersect the reservation. And what we want is we want to copy out the sum values. So we've got the sum for Coconino, the Coconino County portion of the reservation and the Yavapai County portion of the reservation. So we're going to begin by doing the Coconino County portion. So we click on that cell and we do right click and do copy. And now let's go into our other spreadsheet. And we're going to paste this value in. So we paste the value into the highlighted area in the spreadsheet. Now, this is very important. We can't use the keyboard shortcut of Control-V to do this, because what that would do it would paste the formula, and we don't want to paste the formula. We want the actual values themselves. So we need to use the Paste Special option in order to copy the values instead of the formula. So if we right-click and we do Paste Special, see what would happen if I just did paste? It would give me an error. So it's giving some sort of reference error. So you don't want to do that. You want to use Paste Special. And then you click on that. And that will bring up this little box. And you want to select the values. And then say OK. So notice that now the reservation emissions are now calculated by the spreadsheet, and this is based on this allocation method. So we'll do the same thing for Yavapai County. So we'll go back into our other spreadsheet, and we will copy this sum. So right click, copy, and then back in our other spreadsheet, we'll do a right click and we do Paste Special again and we do values. We say OK. So to see this table in its entirety, we use the scroll bar, and now we can see this table in its entirety. And like I said, this is the reservation emissions calculated as a portion of the county emissions based on that VMT allocation. So we can copy and paste this table into our emissions inventory, but there is one thing I want to point out about this table is the VOC data here. So when you calculate your on-road emissions, there's a potential double counting issue that we encounter. So what happens is in the NEI, the county-wide on-road emissions include gas station refueling emissions in that calculation. So if you were to estimate gas station refueling emissions in your inventory at the reservation level, those emissions would be double counted. So let's say you went out and you talked to the gas stations and they told you, yeah, we sell this much gas and this is the amount of gallons, and you entered it into your TICE calculator and you estimated those emissions. Those emissions are potentially double counted here. So for gas stations, remember there's two different kinds of emissions. There's stage 1 and there's stage 2. So stage 1 is actually the emissions from the underground storage tanks that are at the gas stations. The stage 2 emissions are the refueling emissions, and that comes from when you refuel the vehicle. So those emissions are the ones that are potentially double counted here. So just be aware of that, and if you calculated your refueling emissions at the reservation level as a non-point source or a point source, you would want to use this VOC minus refueling column in your table in your emissions inventory. If you didn't calculate any gasoline station emissions, then you would use this VOC number in your emissions inventory. So let's pretend that this blank Word document is my emissions inventory. So I'm going to copy this table into my emissions inventory. So I'm going to highlight this table and do a right click and do copy. And then I'm going to go into my emissions inventory and do paste. So now I've got the table pasted into my emissions inventory. One thing I have to do is because in my fictional reservation emissions inventory, I did include gasoline station refueling emissions as a non-point source. So I need to get rid of the VOC column because I don't want that in there because I need to use the VOC minus refueling column. So I need to get rid of that column. So I'm going to delete that out. Delete column. And now I just got my refueling, my VOC minus refueling emissions, which are my VOC emissions for my emissions inventory for my on-road sources. So you can adjust this table and get it looking to how you want it. Play with that a little bit and make it look exactly how you want it to look. And then you are done with calculating the reservation on-road emissions in your EI. So just remember that you don't have to use this particular allocation approach to estimate these on-road emissions. There are other options out there, and one of those options is to learn how to use the EPA MOVES model and run that and get those emissions calculated that way. It's a more accurate method for sure. It's a bit more complicated than this method, but that's another option. And that's how you go about calculating your on-road emissions.